So the other issue is that thinking is highly related to mood. Whatever is going through your mind all the time, I think we aren't even aware of it, but you're talking to yourself in your head at all times. And if that is, there's certain ways you could talk to yourself to be supportive, and there are ways that you could talk to yourself that could really drive your mood down. And I always give this silly little example, but when I was first doing training, I was at UCSF. I had my first position there, and I was asked to teach a course at Berkeley in the evening. So I was at UCSF until 5 o'clock at night, and at 6 o'clock I needed to be at Berkeley giving a lecture. And any of you who know the Bay Area know that between UCSF and Berkeley is that terrible Bay Bridge with 5 o'clock traffic. So the first night I had to give my lecture, I had it all planned that I was going to get on the last exit and exactly how I was going to get there. So I pull up onto the freeway, and it's just barely inching along. And I was sitting in the car, just a disaster. Oh my God, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be late, blah, blah, blah. And that's all I told myself the whole way over. So by the time, I actually made it just barely in time, but I was exhausted and completely in a bad mood and stressed out from that experience. And then thought the next week, I said to myself, that you've worked a full day and you're going over to teach in the evening. The only quiet time you are going to have in this day is going across the Bay Bridge and, turn the radio on, get some nice music, lay back and enjoy this hour of relative peace. Well, the situation didn't change, but my mood changed dramatically by the way I was thinking about it. So we find with people that if you can change thinking, you can change mood very, very dramatically. Thinking is also related to activities one engages in, and one of the components of cognitive behavioral therapy is helping people do more pleasant things. And it's not rocket science to think if you're spending all your time doing things that are miserable and you're not very happy with, your mood is going to be lower than if you spend some time doing things that are pleasant. And we know that when people are depressed, they think things like, well, I wouldn't enjoy it anyway. I don't want to go do it. I don't want to get out of bed. And the lack of pleasant activities really drives mood further and further down. If you can get people doing more pleasant activities, then they sort of have to fight their depressive reaction. So I was told a story. I had a guy who wanted to go to the movies. That was something he'd always enjoyed before I got depressed, but he got sort of depressed and anxious, and he was sure he would hate it, and he could never make it there on the bus. And so I said, well, the first day, just walk to the bus. This week, first day, walk to the bus that would take you to the movie. Just walk. Don't get on the bus. Just walk there. The second day, walk there. Get on the bus. Ride the bus to the next stop. Get off. Walk home. So each day he did something more. And then we said, but don't go to the movies this week. At the most, just get there. So he got there, and he was feeling so empowered. He went in and watched the movie and really enjoyed it. But, sometimes you have to really help depressed people just get up and moving. And almost always, if you can get folks out of the house and doing activities, and I'll tell you, one of the major ones is often getting people back to church. They get so depressed they won't go to church, and when you get them to return to church, they get so much support. So getting people to do more pleasant things. And we don't just advocate. I think when you think about pleasant activities, our minds all go right to a vacation in Hawaii or something, which really isn't very doable, but it's much more small, pleasant things, and not just fun things. It might be self-care can be very pleasant. We encourage people to do some self-care kind of activities, to do some meaningful activities. A hugely important part of feeling better from depression is finding something meaningful in life to do and to care about. So you will see people get depressed when they lose that meaning. They took care of a loved one who then passes away and now they don't have a purpose. So, finding a volunteer activity or a way to give back to the community or their family can make a huge difference. So we also encourage people to do meaningful activities. And again, activities are highly related to mood. I think we can all think, if you're doing things that are pleasant, that give you some satisfaction, that make you feel good about yourself, you're going to be in a better mood. Then thinking, these things are all related. Thinking is also highly related to how one interacts with others. So if you're thinking, nobody likes me, you're not probably going to be very engaging. If you're feeling distrustful of others, I've had many people become depressed after somebody does something to them unfair. So they come in and saying, I can't trust anyone. Well, you're probably not going to have great relationships with people if you believe you can't trust anyone. And what I try to help people do is think about, well, there are people in the world. We all need to face it that you can't trust, right? They definitely exist. But there are wonderful people who are very trustworthy. So how are you going to figure out how to slowly enter relationships and find who you can trust by slowly taking steps as you enter that relationship until you build some trust? So helping people interact well with others. And social support is very related to mood. I think we've talked about that this morning. I heard people say that's one thing that we can really get in the community is to support members of our community, and it's a huge and important part of treating depression. So CBT basically treats depression by helping patients identify inaccuracies in their thinking. So just to give you an example, we saw a patient once who came in and he said, I was a terrible father. I was never there for my kids, and I wasn't a good father. I wasn't into being a parent. I divorced, left the family. I was not a good parent, and I'm so regretful of that now that I'm older. So we, and as he talked to us, we thought he probably wasn't a very good dad. I was thought that he wasn't very into it, and he wasn't a good dad. But his view was I was a terrible, the worst possible father. So we said, well, maybe you weren't the worst. He still had some relationship with his kids, and so he said, well, ask your kids, and his sons, he had two sons, and they were both very honest with him. They said, yeah, you weren't there for us as we would have liked, Dad. But that one time, Dad, you did this for me. And they all had some stories. They each had a number of stories to tell when their dad was there for them. So his thinking moved, we tried to get him, let's be accurate about this. So he was saying, I was the worst possible father, and that felt hideous to him. And he changed that to, I wasn't the father I would have liked to be. Could I do it over again? I would be much more involved. But, I was there for my kids at times. They have these memories of me doing the right thing for them. And you can imagine how much better that feels than, I was the worst father in the world. So oftentimes it's that helping people get reasonable about their thinking. I'm too ill to work, so I'm no longer working, so I'm useless. There are many good things about people, even if they're not holding down a 9-to-5 job and bringing in high income. So that person might learn to say, although I'm unable to work, I'm a good friend, I'm a good member of my community, there are things I should feel proud about. So it's that helping people get accurate in their thinking. My team is over here, and I'm thinking of one patient. You guys can pitch in if I don't do this. I only supervise the work. So this was someone who believed that if someone asked him to do something, he should do it. And people really took advantage of this man. I mean, he was such a good-hearted guy, but he was stressed out and unhappy at all times because his life was completely out of control. Well, he was running wildly trying to take care of other people. And we convinced him, you're not a bad person when you say, no, I don't have time to help you, or my family needs me today, I can't help you with that. And these guys were so clever, they made little cards that he carried in his shirt pocket. So when somebody called him, he could pull one out and use it to help him say no at first, because it was so hard for him. But, we saw his mood change dramatically when he didn't feel that he had to say yes to every request to help other people.